Hello, everybody, and hello, Ravina. It's great to be back after only a couple of hours. I'm back here.
Spend your time on Twitch.
Yeah, it's not yellow, it's purple this time. But yes, Twitch it is. Something that I'm coming back and back and back again this week. But I really, really do enjoy it so far. How's your day been?
Good, yeah. I had we had a lot of meetings, but actually preparation for devcom is actually going well. I'm excited.
Yeah, me too. So far, like I think it's also going well. And yeah, also good morning, good afternoon, or good day to Hydrace, to Kulia, and to Koshi as well. Thank you for joining.
Hi. How was this morning show, by the way? Robin was with you, right?
Robin was with me. Yes, that was really, really nice. We talked about well, we found out that I am doing all the fun, stupid, silly news, and he's doing all the serious news. So all the news topics I picked was like, hey, Netflix is going to make a live action Pokemon series, and I was very excited. And then Robin came around with, yeah, this company got a funding that is this high. So yeah,
who cares? I'm with you on this one.
Yeah, so it was cool. It was like a social media / cooperative gaming platform, but in India. And yeah, still it was interesting, but also it was very fun to see like that there was this distinct separation of type of news between Robin and me.
So. What is interesting is how we are reading different things, you know, how it's supposed to be a shared reality, but it's not. You know what I mean?
Yeah. So
it's like we have different access to not different. Not we have the same access, but we are getting different output. What was the? I mean, right now I'm following one of the biggest news in the industry. Like everybody's reading about television. I'm sure everyone. It's like I'm sure you talked about this, no? This morning,
no, we actually we skipped it as we felt it's a topic, like we're trying to keep early access still. It's for us, it's a morning show, and we know that the majority of the people watching are also from Europe. And really, while we acknowledge it as a very serious topic, we decided to leave it out and go for a more lighthearted show in general, as we also feel that that a topic that serious shouldn't just be like, we're pretty much just judging articles by the headline also. This is a much better place for people like to talk about this whole issue, and it's especially fitting since today's industry insight is all about positive workplace culture. I hope all the people who are a bit sad or maybe wondering why early access was not really talking about the Blizzard Activision lawsuit that California issued. That's the reason we're trying to keep it a bit lighthearted, like, you know. It's not like when you sent the article on Thursday, I was like, oh, I haven't even had my first coffee and this is the news that I read. Oh yeah.
Actually, I read a lot of the news while I'm drinking my coffee, and I really liked that moment to
Like, I think a lot of people do. I also, like, my grandma, obviously, like a totally different generation. No. I'm just saying that it's it's a very classical thing to enjoy your coffee while reading the newspaper. That's something like a lot of people do that. I don't. But
one normal stuff I'm doing. I'm glad.
Yeah. So yeah, but coffee is good. And coffee in the news, but I'm like in the morning, that's also just a personal thing. I'm not into these like super heavy things. Just give me a bit more niceness in the morning. Like I'm not like, I'm a morning person. I just need like 10-15 minutes to really wake up, and then I'm all cool. But also, like, I don't want my morning to be kind of instantly ruined.
Yeah.
by bad news.
Yeah, I get you. I think I totally understand. I had we had a name. It was one of my old ex-partner. We had a name for that. When you wake up and you have this kind of maybe I shouldn't say it. Nah, I'm not gonna share this one because I think it's not appropriate. Now that I just thought about this. No. Yeah, we had a word for that. For saying like, oh, you wake up and you just like dive into the news and the horrible news. We had a word for that. It was a specific word, and we were saying it, and we knew that okay, that this is the kind of day that it was that kind of day. So we have to just go through it.
Yeah, exactly. And yeah, I'd rather start my morning a bit more lighthearted, just with like a happy cup of coffee and, well, maybe some happy news about a cool game that just came out or was announced or something like this. Yeah.
So which news were you the most happy about this morning?
Maybe the Detective Pikachu one, because what I learned from this article, it's like what it said was Netflix is working on a live action show from a popular video game, but no one knew what it was, and many people suspected The Legend of Zelda, but now it was officially released apparently that it's about Pokemon. And then it talked a little about Detective Pikachu, which was the live action movie that Pokemon recently did, not together with Netflix, but on their own. And that was really successful. And what I learned from that article is that Detective Pikachu is based on a game for the Nintendo 3DS that I didn't know about.
Wow.
Yeah.
But there were so many games on 3DS. I do remember that time there were so many games on the DS. It was crazy. We were flooding the market.
The DS was so good, and then the 3DS, like, it just widened the already big like variety of games that you have, because you could play, for once, the 3DS games, but also the normal DS games. That's true. Even though, of course, the 3DS games were optimized, and it was really nice because you could go to like the main menu and like in the middle of the game adjust the brightness and something, and not save and leave and adjust and no, that was really, really cool. I loved my Nintendo DS, and I think I loved the 3DS even more. I even had it, obviously.
I have one too. Wow,
obviously, I have it in the. I have the 3DS XL, and it's obviously in the Animal Crossing branding. Limited edition, kind of, because Animal Crossing's maybe the best game ever. That's serious, yeah. I really, really enjoy it.
I tried the 3DS, but it got dizzy. I couldn't.
Oh yeah, I always turned it off because it didn't look so good, as the resolution wasn't as high, and I almost never benefited really from it. So I just use it as a DS with a big screen.
Yeah, okay.
And the newest games.
So who is in the chat? Because I only see Hydraz.
I see Gorakosh, and I see Kolea right now, and all the rest. Also, hi to you. It's great having you around. What else do I see? Do I see some lurkers? I'm not gonna call out any lurkers. I know the lurkers are lurking for a reason, and they don't want to be called out. But hey, lurkers, I see you, and it's exciting to have you all here, that you clicked and joined in again to listen us talk about. Well, today it's about workplace culture, really.
Positive workplace, yeah.
No. We briefly talked about it this morning when we read through some of the news. But for example, the head of studios, I think it is, from EA said that they will probably never go back to the full studio-produced games, but will continue doing a lot of remote work for many people. And then we had a nice discussion on how, in general, Robin and I believe that it's a good... it showed us some good opportunity. For example, that many people that... at least have the chance to now do at least a couple of days of home office every week or a month or something like this, which does facilitate jobs, things like maybe you need a handyman to repair your sink or your stove, and they give you a time window, and you're not needed to be really there. You just need to open the door. But in this case, you can just work from home for a day instead of instead of taking a whole day of vacation. You're still able to work. You might be like gone for 10, 15 minutes maybe in total to open the door and talk to them a bit. But overall, you can still be very productive and don't just have to sit on your butt really for the whole day. Especially when they give you time frames like, hey, we'll be there between 8 and 1 p.m. It's like, oh, okay, good. Which is probably the worst that most people can think of, me included. I'm not happy about this. But I'm luckily always in home office.
And sometimes they don't even show up. It happened to me like this sometimes. Like they give you this kind of window of like, yeah, I'm going to come between this time and this time. And they don't.
Yeah.
And you're like,
I once had it that I think it was about my internet provider. Like my internet connection was either not working or I was having trouble in general. And they told me, hey, sometime between 8 and 11, someone would be there. And I think it was even a Saturday. And I completely missed that they would send them on Saturday. They said I would get a call like 30 minutes prior to them arriving, but all of a sudden it just rang on the door, and I thought it was the mailman, because the mailman had to ring the doorbell to get in to access all the mailboxes. So I just like kind of just sleep drunk, went towards the door, just pressed the button and went back to bed, and a few seconds later it rang again. I was like, what's going on? And I opened the door and it was like, yeah, we're from your internet provider. And then the was like, what? It wasn't even 8 a.m. It was 7:45.
Yeah, this is like also, if you say a time, why do you have to come? I understand the punctuality is nice, but earlier than 8. Sometimes I sleep still at 8. I have to admit.
It was the weekend. It was a Saturday. And there was no, hey, we tried to call you beforehand to tell you that we're there in 15 minutes, which is really nice. But yeah. And what I also talked to with Robin was that this full remote work, this full home office thing is not working for everyone. There will be people that do like a 50-50 thing, or maybe even want to work full-time at an office, like just talking about office jobs really. We're well aware that there are some jobs where there's no home office possible at all.
Or sometimes actually you're not for some people it's more difficult to be also productive at home. I mean,
exactly, like
situation. So
families with lots of kids where you don't have like a quiet place to work. But like I then brought the example of my mom, who was forced to go into full-time home office really. But she realized when it was able for her to go to the office at least once per week again, she was so happy. She said it's really good that once per week she can go there. The rest of the time she doesn't have to take the 1 hour drive per route. So she's like 2 hours on the road to go to the job and back home. She doesn't have that. That's really helping her with her spare time, with work-life balance. But it's good for her to be there once a week, to really check the mails, to also see her colleagues in person. So all these things, but in general, she's very happy that they offered her the possibility to go into home office and do these things remotely. But the biggest problem, I think, for them is like security, server accessing all the data, because they are also in the midst of restructuring with the server hosting. And that's really, really bad if you're doing home office and you cannot access the files that you should work on. So there are some technical difficulties, but as long as they're sorted out and you have the right equipment from home, for her it's a blessing and she really enjoys it.
Yeah, I can imagine the security issues. Like, I mean, within the game development is actually an aspect quite important. And also the data transfer, like transferring some huge files. So yeah, it's definitely I wonder how. I mean, maybe we should actually think about this. Maybe having a show about this.
Yeah, maybe that would be good.
A topic next time.
For now, we should probably get our industry experts right into this chat with us, so that it's not just our experiences, but also them. And also, we want to take a deeper look, a deep dive into their opinion on how to form a positive work culture. So. Yes. We'll be back any minute. And we're back. Hi, welcome, Leah and Renee. It's great to have you.
Hi.
It's a pleasure.
Oh, Leah, now you're still muted. I'm not sure if this is on purpose because it's still...
Thank you. I'm going to go muting back and forth until the dogs calm down.
Okay. Yeah, so then, maybe then, Renee, you can start with introducing yourself very briefly. It's great having you.
Yeah, of course. Hi, everyone. My name is Renee Gittins. I'm the Executive Director of the IGDA, the International Game Developers Association. We're a professional association that supports and empowers game developers around the world in achieving fulfilling and sustainable careers. And that's really what we're going to be talking to you about today, how to make your game company sustainable, have a positive work culture, and support everyone. I also actually run my own studio on the side, Stumbling Cat, so I have some experience on that side as well. But at the IGDA, we're always working with game studios to help them be better and support more game developers.
Cool. Thank you so much. And maybe it would also be great to have an introduction from you, Leah, again.
Yeah, happy to. I'm Leah Hardy. I'm head of gaming marketing for the Americas at Facebook Gaming. And thank you so much, Renee, for joining us. I love how she's like, and on the side, I also have a game studio. So I'm doing a lot of things there, Renee.
Yeah.
I don't know when to say no. It's a bad habit.
I was very happy about when Leah, you brought this opportunity to us to talk about this topic, especially because I think for us at DevCom it is a very important topic, and I believe it's getting more and more traction and more present within the industry, not also, but like I think overall. So I was very excited and very positive about this, and so thank you for bringing this opportunity. And Renee, we had been in touch since a year now. And it's always a pleasure to have you. It's also a pleasure to work with you. And we are having some great news coming up and some great shows and things we're gonna plan. So looking forward to that.
Absolutely.
And to welcome you more.
Yeah, no, it's DevCom, you've done such a wonderful job, particularly over this last year, providing important knowledge and support to game developers. It's great to see virtual support like this coming out of an unfortunate time.
Yeah. Well, and I think the topic is kind of on point. Like, I think it has been such a difficult year, and it still is, and I don't think it's gonna go away. Like the impact of this pandemic and the loss of I'm using the word pleasure because it comes from French, but of habits, and but also like the pleasure of having a life, of seeing people. It has such a tremendous impact on us and individual, and also the companies that we're running and we are engaged. So, but the topic is not about this. It's also about diversity, it's about inclusion, it's about making it equity, and so it's very large. And yeah, how are we going to tackle that? How are we starting this conversation?
Well, I think having the conversation in the first place is the important step one, and then step two is recognizing where we haven't been doing well. If the game industry is a wonderful, passionate place that is full of motivated creatives, but that hasn't necessarily been the most inclusive industry, and certainly hasn't been the most diverse industry. We only see 23% of game developers recognizing as women, identifying as women, and we see 81% of game developers identifying as white or Caucasian, or 69% identifying purely as those types of ethnicities. So where do we start and where do we go from here? And I think it really is being proactive in our efforts, proactive in our fight to include more people and to address the failures that we've had and to move forward from there.
The document that you, I wanted to, I was saying to Julian, can we share the infographic?
Sure.
Because that's actually
the infographic or the guide.
I was gonna just the infographic about representation in the games industry.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
I was pulling information straight from that graphic, which was achieved through our developer satisfaction survey. So those who are not aware, the IGDA runs a developer satisfaction survey on a biannual basis to understand not only the demographics of the game industry, but the identified problems within the game industry. One thing that we heard a lot about in our last developer satisfaction survey is that while many game companies have now instituted policies to increase diversity, that many of them don't actually uphold them or live by them or really practice them. And so when I'm saying, proactive cultural development, I truly mean being proactive about the implementation and execution of these goals, of these theories and things that companies are saying that they're doing. And I think that really does start from the top, but everyone can be active in that. Any developer who is in a group that is larger than just themselves can do something to be more inclusive of people. And that's of everyone, truly. We talk about diversity a lot when it comes to gender and ethnicity, but diversity has a really wide background. We have neurodiversity. I mean, we have diversity of parents and non-parents. We have diversity of socioeconomic backgrounds. We have diversity of even things like religions and political thinking. Obviously you can't necessarily hire based on that. That's a protected in some countries, but it's important to have a diversity of backgrounds and thought, because people who have these different backgrounds bring in different perspectives that can be very helpful. And of course that works well for artists and for designers, but it's actually helpful for more technical roles too, like programmers. If you have 5 programmers who have are from the exact same family and have the same background and go through the same school, they're going to approach a problem in the exact same way. But if you have 5 different developers for all sorts of different backgrounds, who've gone to different schools and have different history and knowledge, when they approach a problem, they're going to approach it in probably 5 different ways. And having that diversity of ways of approaching the problem means that you're not going to get stuck, right? You're going to have more people tackling this problem with these different ideas. You're more likely to find the most efficient solution.
I think that's a great point. I mean, the other thing to hit home with Renee's point is that this has been founded in research over and over again. It's not just kind of like a statement like that would be a nice thing to do. From a business standpoint, so I'm getting caught in my cord. It's research has shown. I did some polling last night with this is from McKinsey. It was a study. 35%. If you have a diverse team, you're 35% more likely to financially outperform your industry's national average. When gender diversity, and this is the second point, when gender diversity had a significant impact on business strategy, with better decisions being made 25% of the time, it increased to 50% when you included diversity that brought in age and geographic diversity.
Wow, it's huge. It's huge. I was not aware of those numbers.
I love this. Oh, go ahead.
No, go ahead. Sorry.
I was going to say, it really just shows the value of it, because as much as we love to push progress because it is the ethical thing to do, the moral thing to do, sometimes you have to show that there is also business reason behind it in order to get, especially these larger companies, to move. If you have stakeholders and stockholders, then it helps to do these studies to prove that there is financial reason to make these important proactive efforts that are for the better of the entire industry. And making sure that we support these people within the industry, no matter their background, also is better for the game industry overall, because the game industry has had an unfortunate problem of losing talent rapidly. We saw at least a few years back that the average game industry career was 5 years in length. It is such a short time. I mean, really, that's just as you're sort of getting fully into the game industry at that point. We also saw that the average number of companies that someone goes through in 5 years is 2.2. The game industry is quite tumultuous, and that is part of a product of being a hit-based industry. But another reason for that switching of jobs so frequently is, the theory that people quit bosses, not jobs, right? And unfortunately, the game industry has not had the best history of having the most supportive, understanding bosses always. And that's why we created this guide. We wanted to create tangible, actionable things which leadership can do, which anyone can do within their studio in order to create a more inclusive, more supportive, more positive work culture that is going to be for the better of that company and for the entire game industry and all of the individuals who are working there.
And could we dive into a little bit more about these tangible actions and that leadership can actually put in place? Do you want to elaborate on that?
Absolutely. So I think the first thing that any company should look at when they're defining how they would like to be run is, their mission, their goals, and their values. Your mission statement is kind of what you hope to do overall as a company, and your goals are sort of, financial and how you maybe want to succeed within the industry, but your values are how you plan to act every single day. And you don't have to post your values publicly, but you need to communicate these values to your employees. You need to say, hey, we value diversity, or like, hey, we value work-life balance, or hey, we value critical feedback and other things like that. And defining these values is something that game studios are good at doing, at least the larger studios, but integrating those values in your day-to-day, that is the part where many companies drop the ball. And how you integrate those in your day-to-day is, really and truly being proactive about it. You bring them up every time you have a company meeting. When there is a problem that needs to be tackled, look to those values and see what sort of lens they give that problem. And as you repeat these values and as you integrate them in every single step that your company is taking, then that helps make them solidified and distribute them among the people that you're working with, so they understand that you're truly supporting those values and so that they can shine through. And it is these proactive efforts that very much help. Another proactive effort. Oh, sorry.
Don't go. I was just going to say what I thought was interesting about company values, missions, and goals is they're seen like throughout my career, and it's not limited to the gaming industry by any means, but there's a set it and forget it, right? Let's create it, and then we just put it out there, and maybe it lives somewhere in a company handbook, and then the company and the employees don't actually live by it. And I think one of the ways of pulling that into day-to-day action is, I know one of the ways Facebook does it is it's a part of our performance review. Like one of the questions is how are we contributing to building an internal culture that is positive and inclusive, right? We're actually being measured against that. And what I think is even more important, I think there's been a lot of press about it, is that type of accountability being all the way up to the C-suite, where CEOs and CFOs and everyone are being held accountable to making and setting diversity goals, right? And because if you don't, like any goal, if you don't actually set it, but then you don't have the actionable steps and you're not checking in with yourself, it's very easy to veer off course and forget it.
Absolutely. I think that is 100% the case, and something we're really trying to communicate through this paper. You mentioned employee handbooks, and I think those are actually really, really, really important tools, as long as you aren't doing the set it and forget it. An employee handbook is an opportunity for you to outline not only your goals and your values, and it's an opportunity for you to define pretty much everything that you want to see happening within your company, and to answer a lot of questions that people might feel uncomfortable asking. For example, workplace relationships. If you don't feel that a supervisor should be in a relationship with someone under them, which is generally the case, you should define that explicitly. But some people aren't sure if they're allowed to date coworkers at all. And in these large companies where you're spending many hours with people a week, it's good to write down whether or not this is something that is okay, so people know how to interact with each other. And people don't want to ask. It's like, hey, is it okay if I date Sam over there? It helps to have these defined so people can look it up and answer their own questions. Similarly, if someone does experience a negative interaction within the workplace, these handbooks should detail what they can do to bring that up, like what the preferred route of communication is, what alternative routes are, if that route is, your harasser is part of that route, how to get around that. And having these explicitly defined ways to do this reporting, as well as information about how the action is handled, saying that there's no retaliation because we do these things, and you don't have to worry about this, and this is private until this point in the reporting process. Like you can report this anonymously, and we won't do a full investigation, but we'll keep it on record in case something else happens. Whatever your policies are, and the different routes should all be defined in this handbook, so that if someone does experience something, they can pull it out, they can look it up without just feeling helpless, without not being sure of which routes to take or where to go.
I was going to ask, do you think that every single company, at what stage of the company development, people should engage or create those documents? Is it like early stage from the beginning, or is it like a bit later, or is it? I was actually wondering for myself.
I think early is better.
Yeah, right? I was going to say, the earlier is the better. When you're starting a company, I think coming up with your missions and goals is the first thing that you should do, even before you form a company. And then I think it's progressive from there. As you're working together, you should be starting to think about your values and defining those. And you should start thinking about your other policies. But certainly, as soon as you have different levels of people within your company, if you have a junior and a senior, if you have a director and mid-levels, you should absolutely have a company handbook, because it's those power dynamics that can cause the most anxiety and potential problems. If you're 5 indie developers who are all best friends that work together in the basement of a house that you're paying for together, you probably don't need a company handbook that talks about workplace relationships. Hopefully you have that figured out at that point in time. But as soon as you're starting to contract out other people, or as soon as you bring in an intern or a new hire that's going to be in a lower level position, then you need to have a company handbook, so they can understand how to interact within the workplace and the ways to report potential problems. And it also answers a lot of questions about promotions and pay raises and reviews. And an important thing about going through a handbook and creating it is it reminds you of a lot of these policies that you probably aren't thinking about. In the white paper, we talk about how having company reviews is really, really helpful. An employee might not be sure if they have areas that they're weaker in, and giving them consistent feedback, every 6 months or so, lets them know where they can grow, where they can improve, and is actually going to be much better for the employee and the company overall. And it is something that game studios forget to do all the time, especially when they're smaller and younger, because they're so product driven, they're so game driven, they forget that not only do you have to iterate on your product, but you also have to provide iteration and support for your employees, so they are growing just as much as your team, your game is.
I think an interesting new thing that's kind of shifting, and I love seeing it, is that feedback used to be something that was really held back for your annual review. And in the more I've been in 7 startups over my career, and in some of those startups, we didn't even have reviews, right? And then what sometimes can happen is that in that review, the feedback is sometimes can be used kind of like weaponized against the employee. And it's like, these are all the things you're doing poorly. What I love is this new shift of feedback early and often, and feedback's a gift. And it is not about criticism, and it is not a weapon. It is about having someone's back and helping them continue to achieve positive results and adjust and pivot from negative ones. Mm-hmm. And if it's a part of the culture constantly, like it's no big deal. Like I remember when I used to hear the word feedback first at Facebook. I'm only 9 months on the job there, but this is huge there. I like cringed because I was like, oh my gosh, what have I done wrong now? And it's used so often. Like I have some feedback. I have this, I have that. You have executives all the time. Like, I got some feedback the other day, and I really think there's an opportunity for me to do this. So it's like through the whole system, and all of a sudden the word and the feeling has been like, oh yeah, no, that's guidance. That's helpful ways for me to grow versus these are all the ways that I'm actually not achieving or meeting your needs.
I think it's really interesting that you said, executive was talking about the feedback they received. I think that is a great example of a leader showing the type of culture that they want to see. But also, I think it's really important for people to feel comfortable providing feedback to those above them. Accepting feedback with grace is something that we should all practice, but is absolutely something that leadership needs to practice and that every company should make part of its culture, because there is nothing that is healthier for you than to have employees who are willing to speak up when they think something isn't going smoothly or that could be improved. My favorite leadership book. Go ahead. My favorite leadership book of all time is Creativity Inc. by Ed Catmull. He is the vice president of Disney Animation and one of the founders of Pixar. And he talks a lot about how to create a creative, inclusive environment that is supported by technology. So it is very applicable to the game industry. It's probably the best leadership book you can read for the game industry. And he talks about the concept of candor, which is, speaking openly and truthfully, but not necessarily brutally, right? To be candid in what you are saying, not to be harsh in what you're saying. And I do think there is an important line to be drawn there. And he talks about how not only is it important to provide candid feedback to your employees so they know where to grow, but having a culture of candor where everyone feels that they can provide feedback to everyone else helps everyone uplift each other and to point out potential operational inefficiencies, to point out growth and other possibilities. If your programmers feel like they're empowered to talk up about a potential design flaw instead of saying, oh geez, it's not my area of expertise, I shouldn't talk, it is going to get more of that diversity of opinion that is going to be helpful for everyone and helpful for the product that you're working on.
I was going to add another, from another experience. I'm doing a collective sport, and we receive a lot of feedback when we actually practice the sport together. We actually playing together, and it's very intense, and we have a lot of issue. We had a lot of, not playing right now, but we had a lot of issue about on giving and receiving feedback, because sometimes we give feedback when we are completely high on adrenaline, high on very intensive effort. Physically, we're not able to actually understand and even get the feedback. So very often we kind of switch that around, and we started to ask, do you want the feedback? And so the person is capable to say yes or no, yes now, or no, I'm not capable of getting the feedback right now because I'm going through something that's very intense. I'm tired. I don't know. I'm hungry. I have no idea. But I get the feedback after. So this actually changed the way we started to receive feedback, because we also started to integrate the contextual situation the person was at that moment when we were giving the feedback. And sometimes, if we talk it in a workplace situation, depending of the stress, your family situation, what's happening in your life, you may not be able or at the best situation of your to receive that feedback. So we haven't done that within devcom, I think, so much, Juliana. I think
we too did, because I just joined the team about a year ago, and for me feedback was very important for my work. I just had to integrate into a company that was in the midst of the very stressful preparation for a main event every year.
Yeah.
And so there was a lot of stress just right from the beginning. And we talked a lot about this because actually Rufina and I, we're very different in how we give feedback and also how we receive feedback and how we can work well with the feedback we get. And so, for example, I am someone, I need something good. I need a little sweet, a little something you did good, but also things need improvement. Yeah, I'm a big fan of the sandwich technique. Give me something good that I can cling to while you give me all the bad things that I did and all the things that I really need to improve. Say, but yeah, you're gonna get it because you're super cool and all the things you can do well. While I think if I remember correctly, you was no, just give me the brutal feedback that you have. I don't want any of that sugarcoating. But it's really all about communicating how to handle it. And after all, we agreed that feedback is really important to improve and to get further.
Yeah.
Definitely. Well, maybe Rufina doesn't require praise and acknowledgement, but I think many people do. I think that's super important, not just in the context of giving critical feedback, but praise and acknowledgement are often the best ways to keep someone feeling like a part of the team. Game development is stressful. Lots of things are stressful. And when you're in the thick of it, sometimes imposter syndrome sneaks up on you, or some other icky feelings just come up. And getting acknowledgement for the good efforts that you're doing and praise for it, particularly publicly, in front of your team, in front of the company, even beyond that, perhaps, it allows you to feel like you are doing something of value, that you are being respected and appreciated, that your hard work is worth something. And that is absolutely important to include as much as candid feedback, candid praise as well.
No, I totally agree with that. I think we were discussing about the structure of that feedback. Like how, because I totally agree with the candor, and I think you have to be open and gentle. Like, not all, we're all human beings. It doesn't make sense to actually throw the feedback like this. So because with Juliana, we had a situation when we had a stressful situation, and I gave feedback, wasn't received in the best way possible. So we discussed it after on how to, next time when it happens, how do we approach that situation so that the feedback that we exchange, that her to me and me to her, and the other way around. Anyway, how do we get that message across, actually, so that it otherwise we get less this kind of wall and okay, it doesn't work. That was very the discussion we had, and I think it was, a very valuable for me discussion.
Yeah, absolutely.
Well, I think it's great because what you're doing is, and I think this is great, and as I've grown as a manager, I've learned this more and more, is it was early in my career, it was my what I thought, and it was my approach, and it was very feedback was a one way, right, manager to subordinate. And now I've grown and openly ask for how can I manage you better? What's working for you? What's not?
Exactly. Yeah.
Also, like, how do you like to receive feedback? What are key motivators for you? Like, and really kind of, and some people will be like, I don't have time, I'm too busy to do that. But actually, that's what a good manager is that they're not all just little versions of the same type of person. You have to really look at them as an individual and be like, what are their needs? And how can I adjust my working style to bring out the best in them? Because that's really your role, right?
Absolutely. Early in my career, I had been contracting an artist to work on one of my projects. And since they were contracting and part-time, I only got to talk with them for a few minutes each week. So usually when we were going through those few minutes, I was saying, okay, thanks for these deliverables. Here are the changes that I would like to make. Please let me know your updates. And I thought that this was good and efficient. But what I didn't realize is that I was only providing constructive criticism, And I try to be very, very open as a leader. I try to be like, hey, if you have feedback, I will appreciate it. If it's critical feedback and tells me that I'm being bad, I will still really appreciate it. In fact, I'll appreciate it more. And as I repeated that message, he pulled me aside and said, I don't feel like you're respecting me as an artist. Like, all you do is you tell me how I'm not doing things correctly, and you're not respecting me as a expert within my discipline. And at first I was shocked. I was like, oh my goodness, I didn't realize that that's what I was doing. I thought everything was going well. Like, certainly, yeah, I've asked for more iterations, and I made sure then going forward that as much as I was providing him constructive feedback in the deliverables, I was also providing him praise. I was also asking him specifically for his advice so that he could feel like he was providing something more value to the team than just the single assets that he was delivering. And that greatly improved that relationship, and it made him feel more empowered as a developer on the team.
Not easy.
Yeah, I mean, in all disciplines, no matter what you're doing, whether you're a lead artist or if you're just any other role, a junior level designer, it helps to practice these soft skills. If you're working with a team, which you pretty much do on almost any other project or any project possible, you need to be able to be empathetic, to work well with others, to understand and ask them about what mental state that they're in, so your communication is clear. And obviously, like, this is super, super important for leadership, but it's important for everyone, because being a good teammate is going to help you a lot in helping your project succeed, but also helping your career succeed. If you're prickly and harsh and nobody understands how to communicate well with you and you overreact to things, you could be the best programmer in the world and nobody's going to want to work with you. I've seen that. I've seen people who are extremely talented but extremely difficult to work with, and people don't want to work with them.
Yeah, I had experienced that too.
Unfortunately, I feel like we all have, and that's something that I certainly had to develop within my career. I was an only child. I grew up in a neighborhood without any other kids. I was mostly interacting with adults as a kid, and I didn't understand how to interact with my peers, which meant my social skills were like real wonky, particularly when it came to teamwork and collaboration. And so, as much as I've learned more about programming, more about game development, more about audio and art over this last decade, what I have learned most are all of those soft skills that allow me to communicate more effectively with people, that allow me to be a better teammate and a better supporter. I think leadership is as much about providing support to others as it is about providing guidance. Because if you're a good leader, you're hiring really good, smart people, and they can probably figure out the guidance fairly well on their own with a basic set of goals. But what they need is the support in order to pursue those goals most effectively.
I was gonna share something about Stefan. One of the things he told me when at the beginning of our work relationship was that his work was to actually help me work, and I was like, wow, okay, that was so different from any. And it's good that he's not here actually.
I also remember these talks with him. That he told me a story about a CEO of a different company. I don't remember who it was, and they talked to each other, and the other person said that his work week is 80% meeting with his employees and talking to them and figuring out their pains and what's bothering them and how they can succeed and excel at their job. And that he's also he often does little breakdowns of what he does in a usual work week, and it's like, yeah, and then there's like an hour calling you, and then there's like 2 hours calling with Rufy, and then but like one is strategic and the other one is just chatting and things like this. And it's actually really important. And at first I also didn't understand, but it's so important. I quickly realized to have a motivated team that works well together, and to help them and enable them to get this going and keep the spirits high and help them through their problems, that it just makes sense that he's really all the time talking to us.
Yeah, I mean, communication is absolutely so important. And I think having clear channels of communication for people to discuss with each other, particularly for people to discuss with leadership, is super important. I think one-on-ones are super important, not only just for giving feedback, but to allow the person to express, any problems or difficulties they may have. I think alternative lines of communication are also great. That's why explicit mentorship programs within a studio or employee resource groups where people of a certain affinity can work together and discuss how work is going within a studio are also great, as well as explicit times to give company feedback. Anonymous company feedback surveys are wonderful. Other methods of company feedback are also great. And going back to Creativity Inc., I think he has something he calls Pixar Day, which is where they stop all of their development and production for a day or two. And the entire goal of that day is for people to figure out ways to make the company better. And they encourage everyone to talk to everyone else and make little different groups and have talks of like, all right, how do we tackle this problem? Like, gosh, our animation pipeline is really awkward at this point. How do we improve it? Or like, how can we improve our lounge or our snack bar to make this healthier or some way improved? And I think having those explicit times for that feedback and to encourage and celebrate that feedback is a way to make your company so much more healthy and to grow it.
I think that's a great point, that work culture and environment, it's not static, right? It's an ever-evolving process, and making sure that it's a collaborative one with your employees, whether or not that's 3 people or that's 80,000 people. It's like having them, like finding the right ways to include them and have them help guide the ship. I know some ways that companies do it is they do polls, like what are some key things that you want to talk about, and then the company addresses it in their like monthly meetings to employees. Like, what are some ideas you have on how we can create a better work environment? And they like pulling in the collaboration. It's not a one-way dialogue, and it's always evolving, because it's like you can create something and then realize it's not working well, right? And just having the fluidity that the games industry already has, but making sure that you are applying that to how you approach things, as well as you're developing who you want to be, how you want to work with each other.
Absolutely. And I think, it's really important that you said ever evolving there. Not only do you have to be proactive about cultural development, but you have to reflect on what culture you're developing constantly. We've seen a number of cases recently where large old studios have found out that their culture might not be as great as they think it is. And part of that is, without proactive cultural development, there are problems that have probably arisen within that culture that were insidious and unrecognized, right? But another thing is, in the last 30 years, the culture of the game industry and the culture of our society has actually changed a lot. And as much as I would like to say that, sexism was recognized as a problem as much 30 years ago as it was today, that's not the case. And because there is that progress and evolution as a society and as a culture and as individuals, you do have to be evolving in your values and in your culture to make sure that you're keeping up with the times. Because we certainly don't want to have the best culture of a company that was 60 years ago today, because turns out 60 years ago, it's probably a bit dated and not actually so great by modern standards. As human society, we are forward progressing, and thus we always need to be pushing forward to be better. That is how we have progressed as a society, as a culture, because humans today are about the same as humans, 2,000, 20,000 years ago. It is only because we keep building on our past knowledge and our past progress that we come to where we are today, and we need to continue pushing forward.
and within your document, there's a few that very much connected to this. There's this notion of retention. How do we retain talent within the company, and also how do we train? Because you also spoke when you speak about that it's something that's evolving. We have to train each other, and we have to attend mentorship, external workshops to actually stay up to date and to understand and to be more aware. So there's a huge part about training as well within team development and training and expectation, inclusivity training and such. Do you want to a little bit elaborate on this? There was also mentorship.
Yeah, absolutely. So I think that both team building and team development really integrate with each other well. And I know that these are broken out into two different sections, but both of them are equally important. So let's talk about the whole process of getting an employee and supporting them. First and foremost is recruitment, right? And as you're even thinking about hiring an employee, well, first and foremost, you need to understand what you would like them to do. You should have a clear definition of that. And you know, you need to express your definition of that and your company values in your job posting. You have to really watch out for language that might be unintentionally biasing, either showing your bias or biasing the candidates. As we have seen and the studies have shown, women tend to not apply for a job unless they meet nearly all of the expected requirements, whereas men are like, I meet 2 or 3 out of this list of 8, that's close enough. And that's fine, but it means that you should only list the things as requirements that are really and truly requirements, or else you're going to be excluding a ton of potentially wonderful applicants because you have unnecessary requirements in there. Then as you are going through the interviews for these people who are applying, well, actually, first you need to advertise it well to diverse channels. But then as you're interviewing, you should also have a diverse interview panel that has different backgrounds and has been trained to remove their own biases from these interview processes. Make sure that your interview process is accessible as possible, particularly for people who are neurodiverse or have other potential accessibility issues, and make it open so that you're not excluding wonderful talent over some very small basics. Let's say then you find the perfect candidate and you hire them, you give them that wonderful employee handbook that tells them all the things that they need to go, and then you need to orient them into their job. I think all of us have experienced being hired and sort of tossed into the deep end of the pool and expected to swim. That is not productive for anyone. On-ramping an employee and telling them exactly what their expectations are, to making sure that they're not only comfortable with their role within the company, but within the culture and the other people within the company, is going to allow them to ramp up faster, to be able to ask questions of others, to be able to be as productive as possible, as quickly as possible, and to feel confident that they are fulfilling their job role because they fully understand the expectations that are being held of them. Mm-hmm. And then, once you have this employee initially onboarded, you need to provide them the support to grow and the feedback and training to grow. I had mentioned mentorship. I think mentorship is super, super important. I had also mentioned these employee resource groups, and these are groups that can provide employee support and a chance for them to talk with others in an environment where they don't feel like they're, creating unnecessary conflict. And hopefully they never feel that way. But for example, if you have a single woman engineer on your engineering team, you might want to have a women employee resource group so that all of the women in your company can come together and provide support for each other, because there might be some communication issues, or it might be hard for her to feel with her background that she's getting along quite as well with the culture of the rest of her team, even with the most proactive efforts that you make. So having these groups where people can provide support for each other and relate to each other and, encourage each other is really important for people to stay happy within their job and to feel like they are fully supported, not just from their team, but from the company as a whole. And this also goes into training, not only onboarding of the individual employee to their job role, but other important parts of training of the company values and cultures, and things like harassment and discrimination. In many places, it is now required to have harassment trainings. And I think it is important that harassment training is not treated as this one-off, hire someone to come in and talk to you for an hour and then take a 10 question multi-choice quiz. That's not going to really sink into anyone, and it can be so ridiculous that people are prone to not taking it seriously or to making fun of it. And that is absolutely not what you want. You want people to understand all the things that are saying and to get excited about it even. Mm-hmm. And I know it might sound hard to get excited about, harassment and discrimination training, but if you work to get your company's culture within that training, if you work to have it integrated into things that are proactive, if you have discussions instead of just a lecture and then a quiz, it can help people truly understand what you're trying to say and to engage with it proactively and respectfully. And then, as you're continuing to evaluate, provide these 6 months evaluations and constant feedback and candor and growth of the employees, they'll occasionally leave. I mean, it is hard to keep someone around endlessly. They will have their own reasons for leaving. But anytime someone does leave, I recommend having an exit interview. Mm-hmm. And it's important in this exit interview to explicitly say, like, this is not going to have any effect on your career or on any recommendations that we give in the future. We are truly trying to be better as a company, and we want to get any of your last candid feedback about how we could have supported you better, what you think that we could do better for our own growth, and assure them that it's not going to affect their compensation or anything else, because that is like the last moment of truth that you have to get any ways that you've failed out there and in the light so you can improve upon them. So I think that exit interviews that aren't just like HR trying to figure out if there's a way this person can sue the company are really, really, really important for the company's growth and sustainability.
I never had any exit interview. I wish I had.
I've only had it twice in my career. It's interesting. A lot of companies, I think, avoid it for fear of what they might be told, and I think that's a really interesting thing, because I read something about creating a fearless culture, which is feedback is not one way. And the company and the senior leaders of the company have got to be constantly open and trying to better themselves and the company. And that's the only way you're really going to get there is being fearless about tell me, because this person has decided to leave the company. You're not going to be able to retain them. What learnings can you get so that you can be a better place to work? You can help support your teams better if they're like, you know what, it was just too hard for me to be working on these projects. I could never felt like I was ever achieving. Like this is real, like as the saying said, feedback's a gift, right? And changing and adjusting the way that you approach it to be like, it is not criticism. It is it's guidance. And it's like insights. It's literally customer insights, client insights, employee insights that can help you.
Absolutely, yeah.
I mean, and then very often I remember being in my previous company. Sometimes we will be asking feedback or like opinion, and sometimes very often we will have situation where no one had any idea. It was just like blank silence, and I can imagine that happens quite often for like managers as well. Like, hey, what do you think about this? Wow. And so how do you? I mean, I now that with a bit more experience, I'm guessing the reason why there's no feedback is just because we haven't nurtured that feedback before. So it just wasn't. Of course, cannot happen like this, like poof. So it has to be implemented within the work culture and such. But when you're on that stage and that final point, what do you have to do? How do you go back? How do you move? How do you move forward actually from that? I mean, it's just how do we motivate the employees?
Well, in that specific example, I think it is a great opportunity to lead by example. So you say like, hey guys, how could we have improved on this last milestone approach? And everyone is silent and you go, well, one of the things that I noticed is that I wasn't supporting communication enough in between the art and design teams. And probably I could have provided a better pipeline for that if I had, done this and this and this. Do you guys think that is also, do you all think that is also a potential way that we could have improved? What else could we have improved on with this pipeline? Are there any other communication issues that you feel that we've had? And so, you show yourself criticizing yourself, providing vulnerability. You encourage additional criticism of yourself as a leader, and then you encourage people to comment on similar issues there. That sort of plants the seeds that you need and gives the go-ahead that, hey, it's totally okay to criticize me. It's totally okay to criticize yourself. Like, let's have this be a proactive, productive conversation.
Yeah, I do think it's about tackling, and I do think I absolutely agree with Renee. It's about the perfect way of kind of like breaking that up is having leadership show vulnerability and humility. Like, these are the ways that I thought I could have done better. And because it really is that inherently in feedback is this sense of like openness, exposure, and that can be scary and frightening, which I think when it hasn't been nurtured and it's not nurtured on a consistent basis, you can have the, hey guys, I'd love your feedback, and it's just crickets across the room. The other thing, this is kind of like similar, but not, is going back to trainings. In my head, I just keep thinking about startups and these smaller shops, thinking, I can't do this. I don't have the money to do mentorships. I don't have. I think there's a lot of really scrappy, and I think Renee would agree. And with some internet searching, there's some wonderful like tips, like one example of a training, for example, is it's more like information is like knowledge is power, right? Which is statistically, when you are in a room full of people, individuals, people of color, women, and other underrepresented individuals are less likely to speak up. So what you do, you yourself, whether or not you fit into that group or you don't, you take it upon yourself to say, hey, Sarah, I would love to hear your thoughts on that. Or Bob started talking and he got interrupted by somebody. That's another thing, is there tends to be interrupting and cutting off of those groups. Hey Bob, like we didn't get your thought there. I wanted to come back to that. I'd love to hear what you're thinking. So it's like really helping create, like opening up a dialogue and kind of helping be an ally to bring those voices into the room, knowing that this is our historical issue, is not allowing the voices to be there. They may be in the room, right? And we just haven't been listening. And taking an active role. Like, that's a perfect example of a training you can give your employees that is simple, it's free, it's easy.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's a great example, as you noted, of allyship. That's something that anyone can do at their company. They can make sure that people who don't normally speak up are given the opportunity to be heard. And if someone does speak up and it seems that their message doesn't sink in, there's that repeat while crediting them approach of like, I really enjoyed what Sarah said, that exact same thing. Like, I think that we should consider that, amplifying their messages and voice so that they can get the recognition and platform that they deserve.
How much time do we have left?
Is it 2 minutes?
No, it's all fine. It's 5:30. I'm not sure how long you plan on continuing to go.
Is there anything interesting in the chat? I can't really see it because the screen's so small. Is there any questions that someone might want to ask Renee as like a nice closer or something?
So far there's been mostly, I agree. Oh, that's so valuable. Thank you for sharing that paper. And just right now, Hydrace wrote, Fall Ager at Renee, IGDA got international chapters, but the German chapter in Berlin seems quite empty, at least on the IGDA side. Is something planned in this direction? So this is not directly linked to what you already talked about, but yeah, still very interesting.
Yeah, I mean, I think this is, I'll bring this into a larger example of the conversation here. So the IGDA has over 100 local chapters around the globe, and something that we're working on is empowering those chapters and those leadership to be more proactive. So what we've done is we've created 12 regional coordinators that support the regions, and our European regional coordinator is working to empower the local chapters there. So over this last year, it's been difficult for many chapters because they haven't had in-person events, and not all of them have been able to transition online as smoothly as some others. So what we're doing is we're working to empower those chapters. Whoops. Sorry. We're working to empower those chapters by providing them with guidance and training that they need. So we're creating resources for them to be able to host events and just, go through a one-pager sheet of how to organize the events. We're also giving them feedback. We're going to be having a regional coordinator discussion, and then a chapter and SIG leader discussion, and then our entire annual general meeting, which will involve all IGDA membership and whoever wants to attend, so that we can address potential issues for like why a certain chapter might not be active. So we're providing support, we're giving training, we're giving opportunities for candor and for feedback. And then, we're hoping to help these communities do the same for these leaders to do the same for their communities. Is that answering the question while also keeping
I love it.
topic?
It's like a real life, example.
Yeah.
It is.
Yeah,
So we're expecting as we create these trainings to see more and more activity from all of our chapters.
We'll see how Hydrace answers and if they, found their question, sufficiently answered, yeah.
Yeah. They will be back. One of my last question was, because we talked a little bit about crunch, I think, I don't remember. And I was currently I'm taking a lot of time thinking about mental health and how as a company, I'm talking about devcom actually in that case. How do we, as a devcom, how do we help our our employees to have a healthier work-life balance? How do we make sure that we don't cross any line? How do we address when this happens? What is the because I mean our industry is also we're going through crunches, obviously, when we organize events and such, and we're not immune to stress and breakdown and such. But we have to take care of each other because we are a small team, and we are not. I mean, it's not the only one in that case. It can be duplicated in any case. So I mean, I think a lot about this, and I think we need to. I will share those thoughts. I wanted to share those thoughts with the team actually, and I forgot. But yeah, do you have any ideas or any actions or guidelines in that sense?
Many, in my opinion. We actually shared a really wonderful article earlier about Supergiant Games and how they not only have unlimited vacation, they also have minimum mandatory vacation. And we've seen this be implemented at some of the more successful tech and game studios, because if you give unlimited vacation, people don't always necessarily take it. They feel like limited or unlimited vacation means that any vacation they take is perhaps unnecessary. Like human brains are funny in how we evaluate unlimited or infinite. And I think that having mandatory vacation is one really, really wonderful way to help your employees disconnect because they know they have to take it. I think also important task of leadership is to aggressively enforce hours, right? Like And I mean by chasing your employees away from their computers and saying, go home, spend time with your family.
Yeah.
Yes, there are periods of crunch. Yes, they're horrible. Yes, we should do everything we can to avoid them. But if periods of crunch happen, what leadership's task is to do everything possible to serve their employees during that time and to prevent it from happening again. I think that too often game companies are like, well, we crunched and we made a really good game, so I guess we'll crunch and make a really good game next time. As a terrible approach. Is going to burn out your employees and they're not going to have faith in you, right? No one wants to crunch. It feels awful. And you should do everything that you can proactively to avoid it.
But I think, sorry, I didn't want to interrupt, but
no, please.
I was thinking about this because I was reading about like other game companies that are doing well in terms of creating a positive work environment, and crunch just comes up and up again, right? And I was like, it's the nature of the beast in some ways. It's like a movie. It's like these pieces of content where the development and the production of it are like inherently incredibly challenging. And so it's like part of me is thinking like, instead of acting like it doesn't, like it's not, like how can we start to innovatively think about how do you create work-life balance when you have these sprints, essentially, right? How do you balance things more successfully or in a better way? And I feel like it's an ever-evolving process, but I was like, this is kind of like, we all want to say like it's not going to happen, but the truth is by the creative animal is kind of driving that. And yes, there are things you can do to avoid certain things, but then there are some things that are a little bit inevitable. So like, what are the ways you can restructure how you approach it so that you're like flexing and moving with it? And as Renee said, not burning out your talent, right? Which is your most valuable resource.
Yeah. Well, I have two recommendations for that. The first is more general, and that is iteration. As game developers, we understand that iteration of the products we're working on is super important, but we also need to consider iteration of our approach to development as well. We should have regular feedback periods and look at how we're approaching development as whole, and constantly involve it. The other way is something that I have talked with one of my good friends about. He is the director of development at a very large studio, a AAA studio. And the way that he has approached it with his teams is saying, this is the timeline in which we need to get things done within. You tell me what we can do in that timeline. Don't tell me what you want to fit into that timeline. The goal shouldn't be, hey, we have 50 monster ideas that we've created and we need to make 50 monsters in 6 months. It is, how long does it take to make one of these monsters? And let's make one. Okay, we're expecting it's going to take 6 weeks to make a monster. Sure. And then we do it and it takes 7 weeks. Okay, now that we know it takes 7 weeks, that means we can fit in 6 monsters. Okay. It's not 50 monsters, but now we know that we can create 6. Is there another way that we can create more? Sure, let's do a recolor. So instead of doing, 6 different monsters, we're going to do 4 different monsters with 4 different recolors for all of them. And that's how we're going to get our 16 different monsters. And sure, it's not 50, but it fits within our timeline. And that is while constantly reminding employees to go home so they're not working over 40 hours a week. And I think it's that approach to development of making your project fit within your timelines. As we know, game development is often very milestone based, instead of crunching to fit your ideas within the timeline. That allows people to have that healthier work-life balance and to make the project adjust, not to make the people adjust.
I love that. I love make the project adjust, not the people. And I know in chat I must be going bananas. It's like it's not realistic, but we have to keep striving, right? Like we have to, and we have to keep finding the ways of trying to get there. Can't give up.
I got one other question in the chat, and I think it's a very important and good one. Hyde raises there again, mentioning, but having people take vacation doesn't mean they answer mails. How would you make the people really take a break?
I think that again is with culture, right? And and expressing your values and culture. If someone's supposed to be on vacation and you get a message from them, your response should be, thank you, we'll address this when you're back in the office, right? Don't let them work. Prevent them as much as possible. And of course, I say this as somebody who constantly overworks myself, so I'm a terrible example. But I am very, very clear with my employees and my staff members that when I'm working with them and they are supposed to be on vacation, that, hey, thanks for your feedback. I will talk with you about this more when you're back in the office on Tuesday, right? And it's that constant repetition of what you mean there and proving of your values that allows people to absorb and accept that as the culture. Because if you let them engage and send those emails and give them some feedback, they're like, oh, okay, it is okay and perhaps expected of me to do this. But you really need to be polite, but also tell them, no, stop.
Yeah, it's setting an example. Like I've worked in companies where my boss would go on vacation, but they absolutely were not on vacation. And so then it set up this dynamic where then I couldn't really go on vacation, right? There was always this expectation that whatever project, and so then at that job for 4 years, I never didn't work on my vacation. And at Facebook, I actually recently had my very first vacation in probably 15 years where I did not bring my computer, my phone. I completely, but they've set it up where that is, my boss does that, my boss's boss do that, they are gone. And the world, and they say, like, if the expectation is that the world can't keep going, if one person takes some time off, you've set up the dynamic wrong, right? You've hired wrong, you've orged yourself wrong, and that it's so important, and we all know it, like, especially in the creative fields, like your time away, your brain never really stops, but you're getting like refueled and fueled. Like it shouldn't always be like, I'm a cup and I just drill myself down to absolutely nothing, and then I go on vacation and then I bring myself up a little bit just to start it all over again, right? Like we have to kind of start to shift our mindset of like, that is really, really protected time, and it is a win for everybody.
Absolutely. Yeah, I think that's important. Because it is so easy with all of our modern technology to never fully separate from what you're doing. And Hydra's mentioned like auto email responses. That's great. Encourage all of your employees to set up automated like vacation reminders so they don't feel guilty if they get a message and they need to address it. I think that's actually important to note, particularly with the pandemic that we're having. Many companies are relying a lot on messaging programs like Teams or Slack or even Discord. And while those are really wonderful platforms that allow for dynamic and casual conversation, it also provides this expectation that you're able to engage like this. And they don't have automated vacation responses on most of those platforms. So always encourage, in my opinion, a very clear way to engage with someone that can get that feedback that they're not available, instead of expecting important deliverables to be discussed through these platforms. I prefer email. It made me feel really old school, but I make it very clear that email is the best way to contact me. And if I am not contactable, you will get an auto response from my vacation reminder through email.
Yeah, that's also something that I realized. I love Discord and I love how fast paced it is and how quickly you can get a hold of people and just like the overall functionality. But I'm incredibly thankful that we're not really using devcom, not really using Discord within devcom as our communication tool, because then I can sign off out of everything else. And none of that. I don't have a work phone. I don't get emails on my phone. I have a work laptop that's separate from my own PC. So I can really shut all of that off, and that helps. I remember when I started, I put my work calendar on my phone, and that is synced also with the emails. So for one weekend, I received emails to my phone, and I'm one of these people that cannot stand when there's like a little dot there telling me that I received new emails. I need to read them immediately. And it was a nightmare. And on that weekend, it didn't even take 48 hours. I deactivated it on my phone. No more emails on my phone. That helps. The little things sometimes.
Sometimes I admire Juliana's
boundaries, healthy boundaries.
Yeah, but also the strength on how she's implementing them. I mean, I'm also a little bit like Renee. I can very slip away. Like I can actually put boundaries for others, but it's very hard to actually respect them myself, which is hard work, but trying very hard.
I think we all have that. That we're like, hey, no, you don't do that. No, it's your day off. Why are you here? Why are you answering? That's not good. Rufi, no, it's your vacation. Stefan, what are you doing?
Yeah.
But then our service is like, oh no, I just need to finish this, and it's so quiet on the weekend. I can do this now.
Yeah.
I think we all do it.
I definitely need to be better about leading by example. I think that's another thing with this past year. It has thrown everything into such a weird state of like the blending of work and not work. And certainly the IGDA had to pivot aggressively to switch from having support for all these in-person conferences to doing everything online. And I've gotten into a mode of like, everything is on fire. I need to protect my staff so I have enough money to make sure that they are paying, rent and staying healthy. So like, I'm going to do everything possible, and probably should learn to tone that back a bit so I can lead by example, because I am always encouraging them to completely sign off when they're on vacations and such. And, it is now August and I haven't used a single one of my 15 vacation days.
I think that's your action item.
My action item is to get off minimum vacation day usage.
Well, when are you going to take it, right? Like everyone says, like you need to be specific. So look at your calendar and be like, these are the days I'm going to take it. I'm going to inform everyone, and I'm going to stick to it no matter what happens.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Okay. I mean, we could discuss longer, but I guess we have to sign off at some point.
It's been a great discussion. Thank you so much, Renee, for joining and sharing the white paper.
It was a pleasure. Any last comments? I mean, I don't like to say that, but it's kind of fun. Any last, like...
Anything else that you would like to add before we end this show?
Thank you. Yes.
You're welcome.
I mean, I just want to say I highly recommend if you haven't looked at the white paper to check it out. It's a really clear, easy to read resource. I think it's only like 13 pages long, but it's very easily consumable. Even if you're not in a leadership position, it is a great way to evaluate the current state of your company, of what you want, if you want to be a leader, what you should keep in mind, just nice actionable items that you can take and that you can consider and that you can bring to the leaders that you work with. And be good to yourself. Be good to yourself, be good to the people you work with. It's all about communication and empathy and respect and candor. And so try to live by those values, and I'm sure you'll find success.
Yeah.
Thank you for those words.
Yeah, totally. I mean, we should implement them right. Like, we should all keep them in mind. Like, as a reminder constantly, as a reminder not to forget, because we easily go back to old bad habits. Anyway, but yeah, it was always a pleasure to have you both. Thank you very much. Thank you, Juliana, also to actually make it happen. Because without you, the show would not happen. To be honest, I'm not hosting. I don't know. And I guess we will see you very soon, either at devcom or in one of our other industry insider show. Juliana, you have early access on Friday?
Well, I have plenty more. Tomorrow morning, I'll be live here again with Games on Cafe, our only German show. I'll be talking to both Robin from our team and also Andre Bernhard, our indie advisor. On Thursday, there will be Vertical Slice, where Astrid and Andre will talk to the developers of Cloudpunk. And on Friday, then there's early access again with me and Nico.
Okay.
Awesome. That sounds like a great set of events to join and watch.
Yes.
Thank you very much. And thank you for everybody who was in the chat and listening to us or on participating. We will actually see you and talk to you very soon. Thanks.
Thank you.
All right.
Bye.
Take care. Bye.
Thank you.
Bye bye.